Greetings, comrades. We have kidnapped Alex, and we're keeping him hostage. Please, if you are already not subscribed to his Substack or Patreon, do so now. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen to you. I'm not going to explain, you know yourselves. Do not switch the channel, do not turn off the volume, turn it louder, I would say, in fact. And welcome to History Impossible.
And the Eastern Border, Das Vidania, yes. All right, so if people aren't confused, we're doing a joint episode, Chris and I, because Chris is in, where? Texas.
Fort Worth at this moment.
Fort Worth at this moment, yeah. Which, I mean, honestly, if you're going to come to America, where better else to go for I won't say an exaggerated representation of what America is, but it's a little bit more of a representation, I think, of what everyone else thinks of America besides. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what everybody in Europe, at least, thinks of us, which is perfectly fair.
Look, like I said, I have today in the stockyards, which is like the place where the West began, like the historical stockyard thing. Oh, that place was the only place where we saw people actually speaking with a Texan accent.
Oh, it's amazing,
and I still haven't seen any guns. Any guns at all. So, yeah.
Well, that we will get back to this in a minute, but then you are very much unlike Stanislav Petrov, but that we will get back to that. So I wanted to just first ask you, how is America treating you? How many times have you been now?
Gloriously. This is my fifth time.
Fifth time. I was going to ask
me,
third,
this is my fifth
or guess
time.
third. Yeah. Fifth time. And glorious. Okay, great.
By the way, people recommend that I do a show in Latvian where I go through all the states and explain state stereotypes to Latvians.
I like that.
Because most Latvians think the United States is a singular monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't tell you the difference, and this might shock you people, but they won't tell the difference between Texas and Utah and California. They would think it's the same place. I'm honest. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but supposedly in that new movie by Alex Garland called Civil War that speculates a second American Civil War, apparently Texas and California team up. I don't know how or why, and he doesn't explain it. And I like that. I actually really like that that's not explained, but it does kind of raise some questions. Like, what is it that puts those two states together?
Basically, I want to just mention two quick things, though. Number one, America is really like, you guys have the right mentality. You have a lot of issues. I'm not saying you're perfect. However, you have the mentality, you have this can-do attitude and this relentless optimism, as I like to call it, which I enjoy thoroughly, which has pulled me through a lot of things in life. And secondly, we're doing this joint episode so that I can enjoy my honeymoon and don't have to think too much.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we want to talk about we call it your special wedding episode, I think, where you talked about. Yeah, and it's very, we can call it, I guess, I don't know what we'll call this episode. I'll probably just call it the same name as the documentary, is The Man Who Saved the World, because that does seem to be the consensus about this guy we want to talk about today.
I mean, yeah. Like, I call it Hero of All Mankind because I don't know. I come up with silly names from episodes. They're the last thing I write. Like after everything's recorded and everything, I figure I usually want to make them sound punny at least, or something interesting.
Well, yeah, and I understand. I mean, the thing is, like, what I was saying, and maybe I'll get into this a little bit later while we're talking, but I finished watching the documentary about this man, Stanislav Petrov, who we will explain who that is in a moment. But I finished watching the docudrama, I should say, that was made around the time of his death, I think. And it was like 10 to 15 years in the making.
And the Russian documentary that I saw was about making of that movie, where they also explained how the movie was made, how they gained the trust of the guy, and everything like that too.
I'll have to look into that after this, because I'm actually very interested in that, just based on a filmmaking perspective. But with that said, what I sort of came away from that, and I was talking to my partner Molly about that, because she was watching it with me, sort of like half watching it, and I said, I kind of understand his reticence to like really get into this in his life, because like, or his humility even, because I don't want to be known as the guy. If I'm him, I don't want to be known as the guy who saved the world. I want to send the message of how horrifying it is that it really was that close. like that we were that close to just complete annihilation, and that should be the lesson of how horrible it is. That there's not I mean, it was very Russian. It was very Eastern border, if you will. It was like the more pessimistic take is the right one, but that's just because that's my personality. I'm just like, this isn't a good. I mean, it obviously is a good thing, but it's not a good thing in terms of what it means.
Yeah, I know. But like in these latter years, at least, because in his own country in Russia, he's not respected at all. He was not recognized, not respected at all. But I really like the fact that how Hollywood stars went and greeted with him. He met Matt Damon and everything, and
Ashton Kutcher, which is hilarious.
But the thing is,
Kevin Costner,
look, he loved Kevin Costner. The documentary said that he was a huge fan of his movies. So for him, like a documentary, the Russian documentary that I watched, mentioned the fact that after he met Kevin Costner, he literally cried, and like he said that was the happiest day of his life.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, and he was marveling over in that documentary. He was marveling over that DVD copy of The Bodyguard, which I have to admit I've never seen, but I know it's a very well loved movie.
And the thing is like, for him, like he was not even paid that much for the movie at all. Like he got some money from it, but basically because in Russia, again, dark story, but 80%, like a lot of Russians are very much in debt because of like everyday expenses and everything, because salaries are very low. Average Russian salary right now is about $450 per month.
Yeah, and that doesn't. We're not going to get derailed here. I'm not going to let us get derailed. But I was going to say that's one of those things where like that's what made that stupid fucking thing that Tucker Carlson did, like marveling at how cheap groceries were, like why it was so dumb. Because sure, it's cheap if you're an American, especially if you're Tucker Carlson. But I'm sorry. What do average Russians make when they go to that? And what do they get to get when they go to that grocery store?
I really like the fact that I watched Petrov guy. I really enjoy the fact that because the documentary that I watched, the Russian one, said that he was very skeptical about the West. He always viewed the West as some sort of an opponent, and then at the end of his life, he really came to understand the fact that, hey, really good that I didn't push the button because, his own government is pushing him down. But then all these Westerners from the movies literally are coming and talking to him.
Interesting. Okay, so you're kind of getting into a question I had, but I think before we go any further, because we are kind of talking about this from our perspective as two guys who know who this guy is.
Let's start explaining things.
Yeah, let's get a little context going on here. So I'm going to let you do that. I do think people should listen to your episode for the full story, of course. But I think that just in case, we should cover the basics. So who was Stanislav Petrov? What was his job? What made him so special?
Super short story.
Yes.
This happened in 1983 during like the massive height of Cold War, because like in the same month this event happened, the Korean Airlines flight was downed, like shot down by Russian MiGs with American citizens on board, an American senator on board. Yeah. Like really. And Stanislav Petrov was an IT guy, and these days you would call him a programmer, basically. Who was he had a civilian education, but he obviously worked for the military, and he was one of the people responsible for the so-called dead hand system. Like he was making that stuff, like the thing you saw in Dr. Strangelove. He was responsible for the system, which basically he's the guy who looks at all the data that comes in, and if filthy American capitalist pig dogs launch a rocket at the mother Russia, then he's the one that presses the button and calls up to literally Andropov himself at the time, straight up, and says, launch them nukes.
The real old man at that point, Andropov, he was like in his 80s at that point, right? I mean, he was kind of there. He was kind of the Soviets' Joe Biden in a way.
He was one of the three guys, Chernenko, and there was Brezhnev, who was like really old after his rule. There was Chernenko, then there was Andropov, and there was and the joke is that why did Brezhnev appear on the public stage more often than Andropov? Because Brezhnev was on batteries while Andropov had to be plugged into the electrical supply. Because Andropov died on a dialysis machine.
I shouldn't laugh about someone dying or being old, but that's a very good Eastern Bloc joke.
And another joke is, which I use for a lot of my episodes, is the fact that a TV operator, like the TV guy who reads the news, says in the news, "You will laugh, of course, but our land has been struck with another terrible tragedy."
Of course we'll laugh.
Because they happen so often.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, especially by the 80s, yeah. It, like, honestly, Gorbachev was a spring chicken at that point when he took over.
Because all of these guys had waited in line to get they were all revolutionaries from 1917. They had all waited in line to get their power. And Andropov was the ex-head of the KGB before that. He was one of the good guys in my episodes about Chernobyl, because while he was the boss of the KGB, he literally was like going apeshit about how the nuclear power stations were built poorly, and he literally said, "Dude, Chernobyl's gonna fucking explode if we don't fix this." I don't say this often, but at the moment when Andropov, the head of the KGB, is a good guy in a story about something, then you know how horrible things are going, you know.
Especially when you know, like, who came out of the KGB later, we'll say.
I mean, it's like insanity. But basically, Petrov's job is to be in these. He's programming the satellites. He's operating the satellites that gather all the data, and his job is to take in all the data, review what the computer tells him to do, because they're all relied on the computers back then. And he's like on the bleeding edge of Soviet computer technology at that point. Because like there is no higher point there. Satellites in space, missile tracking data, everything, like the bleeding edge of computer. Like if you're an IT guy in Soviet era in 1983, this job that you get is like the bleeding edge of technology that you can get to. Like there is nothing more advanced in the whole Soviet Union.
Except the guy who made Tetris, of course.
Oh, that was later.
Yeah, I was 2 years later. Yeah, I know.
By the way, about Tetris, I will make an episode on Tetris because the guy received $0 for his effort.
Oh yeah, but to be clear, there's a great movie about it actually. I'm sure very fictionalized, but a movie about him that is an amazing.
Hey. I will not allow you to derail this conversation.
No, but I just want to make the point that even though he did not make any money off of that, he is a very successful man who works for Microsoft now, I believe. So he's fine.
I mean, he's fine. Stanislav Petrov, however, was not fine because he did not. He decided to look at the data, and because of his training, he realized that because it was not one missile, it was 5. Like it was one that was 5. And he realized that if it would be a real first strike assault, there'd be thousands of missiles. And everyone around him was like panicking, and he's like the boss of this whole area. And he waited and the retaliation strike from the Soviet Union to the United States is 30 minutes at that time. He waited until like he waited for like 29 minutes of this 30-minute allotment time to tell the higher ups that it's a false alarm. Based on the fact that he waited because he didn't trust the computer. He knew that something's up, and he waited for some ground detection sites telling him that, you know, something's up. I think he made the first call the 14th minute, and then the rest of the time until the 30 minutes pass, until like the travel time, he said that those are the most stressful minutes of his life, because on the one hand, he has prevented nuclear holocaust by saying that, because he's the responsible person that goes to Andropov and says, no, this computer data false, don't launch. He also could have made a call and said, like, everyone around him really pressured him into this, by the way, because everyone around him is like panicking and waiting. Like, they also all see the computer data on the screen. But everyone's screaming, "Oh my God, Americans are nuking us!" And he's like, "No, chill, wait." And he really wanted to see if there is any visual confirmation of the rockets, because that was the only missing part of the data. All the computer parts told him that there was a true strike, true launch. All the data says this. Satellites confirm it. Multiple sources, everything except visual confirmation of actual missiles. And he said, no confirmation of missiles, no launch. And he was like really, really arguing. And then he makes the call. And like, I like how the commander said, like, he wasn't supposed to be on that shift, because these programmer guys, they were on this command shift once a month at best. This was his second shift per month, because the other guy who was supposed to be on the shift, he was like got in flu or something. And he was like at random there. And he just chose to basically not launch the missiles without visual confirmation, because he was like, he had two options. Either he starts a nuclear holocaust, or if he doesn't start it, then the Soviet Union just gets wiped from the earth, and everything he knows and loves dies. And he has this responsibility here. And I really want to stress how hard it would be to make this choice. For example, I know that in the United States, nuclear forces, they don't hire anyone above the age of 23. because younger people don't have, yeah, really, I watched a documentary on this, because younger people don't have families and they're more eager to do, like, crazy stuff. They're more likely to obey orders and they won't think about their loved ones and their families. In this case, Petrov's civilian training and the fact that he wasn't an army man, he was a programmer, and the fact that he had a family, and apparently he had a very loving family, because we got interviews from his wife and they were married all the time. Like, they in total were married for about like 60 years or so.
Well, they got married. Well, at least they've been together for a long time. But
Yeah, for
I
a
know
long time.
They've been married since 1973. I looked
Okay,
that
so
up.
they were together like previously as well.
Right? Yeah.
The documentaries say that basically they have about his family life. There's nothing but loving, caring relationship and like genuine affection, which is, in Russia that's rare, because in Russia, no, seriously, in Russia you have quotas of domestic violence. Like, the cops will only arrest you if you've been called like the third time for beating up your wife, say. And he has never gotten into any trouble like that. Apparently, he had like actual genuine loving relationship and everything. And like you saw in the movie, like that scene when he thinks about his wife and kids and all this stuff, it's a very powerful scene, but it makes sense. And the whole fact that, I don't know, like my point of contention with a lot of Western documentaries, because I used Russian sources for this one, and we'll get to this, because how the Russian movie makers that made the documentary about him got treated. That's another whole different thing. To the end of this episode, I'll let you guys teased on this. But how Western side often portrays this is that the man who saved the world by doing nothing. And I hate this idea.
We will definitely come back to that. I mean, I can name names, or at least name publications, and this is really disappointing because it's a very austere publication from the United States that repeated this and probably helped solidify it. But let's stay focused on Petrov here, because what I guess what I'm wondering, and I think a lot of people in both of our audiences would wonder, what was his relationship?
At this point, I think the people who listen to your show and don't listen to mine, and vice versa,
it's kind of weird, yeah. But okay, so but basically, I think a lot of people would be curious what this guy's relationship with the Soviet authorities was.
Oh my, yeah, that's the thing. At first, he was praised for not starting a nuclear holocaust.
Sure.
However, just like in the modern Russian army, in the Soviet army, the same thing was like, okay, he doesn't look good. However, his superiors look bad now. And that's a big no-no. So at some point, they started
Seems kind of similar to Chernobyl, by the way. I'm just saying, there's kind of a theme going on here, like with like a lot of like ass covering, I guess what we would call it here in the States.
Pro tip, collective punishment does not work.
No, believe me, I'm very aware of that after what I've been learning in grad school this semester. But well, anyway, so let's get to this.
He at one point got like he was demoted, sent away, after all this. People blamed him for even making the whole errors, and like his superiors blamed the computer mistakes on him because he was a programmer. They blamed the whole event on him.
I'm getting angry already. And it's because of how much I hate the Soviets.
Look. Yeah. Basically, up until the Western audiences came up to him and like started talking to him, like, and started making movies of him, he was living off a pension of about $200 per month for years.
Jeez.
So I watched this Soviet documentary, and he's basically unknown in Russia because he's not popular. Because showing some clear thought and everything, and not blindly doing random bullshit apparently gets you punished, because he made the superiors look bad. He made the program look bad, which was bad because money was stolen. They didn't build it.
Here's I just had this thought. It's call it maybe a counterfactual. I don't know what you call it, but it makes me so like just baffled that like, okay, I'm putting myself, please forgive me, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a, well, hold on. You're already saying it, and it's why. I'm putting myself in the shoes of being an advisor to Putin vis-a-vis propaganda. Because Putin's been in power, 24 years now, give or take, and a couple months. And I'm just wondering, why don't you celebrate this guy as, because clearly Putin does not like the United States. But I'm just saying, like, he's symbolic of somebody who cares about Mother Russia. He cares about the Russian people, and that is why he saved the world. Like, that's such a propaganda coup right there. It's amazing.
But he's against aggressivity. This is the same thing why This is the same thing why paintings by Ivan Ivanovsky are banned in Russia, which are two. One of them is called "American Food Ship Arrives to Save Starving Russian Peasants."
So the idea of Petrov saving the world is too pro civilization that includes the United States.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like it does not embody the glorious death which modern Russia, death cult as it is, wants to celebrate. They want to celebrate glorious death in combat. Like literally, like just yesterday, because I've still been following the news. Just yesterday, there was a Russian. And I have to make some news here because of my audience.
Of course, yeah. But by the way, for people listening, this is April 25th, 2024, just so we
thank you.
Put a pin in this.
Yesterday a Russian MP came into the stage and said, I don't understand these Western values. Our people are complaining that, a human life should be value. I was raised in a society where, first of all, it's my government and the glory of my state, then is the honor of my family, and then only then, in the third place, then there is my life. Why are they complaining? They should all be volunteering to die for the glory of Mother Russia. That's the direct quote. I'm literally translating a quote for you.
And what baffles me about that in general, I mean, there's so much that baffles me about that, but I'll put aside my, ideological bias against nationalism, which, as much as I can understand the appeal of nationalism, I have an issue with it. But putting that aside, like, what is he talking about? There is not an existential threat to Russia akin to the Nazis flooding by the millions over, the border.
Well, look. According
this is not Operation Barbarossa, motherfucker. Like, what are you talking about?
Look, according to the Russian propaganda, right now they are fighting an existential threat in the sense of they are already at war with the Americans and the whole of the EU.
I mean, it's NATO. It's NATO, and I'm sorry to be dismissive. We'll get to that in a little bit, actually. But yeah,
no, it's fine. Then, like I said, look. I'm in the United States. This is not my usual time zone. I'm just trying to respond to what you asked me here, and I just
right. I'm sorry. And we're getting a little derailed with current events for sure.
Look. If I'm chaotic, please excuse me. I'm still technically on my honeymoon.
Yeah, of course. No. So basically what we were talking about, though, is how Stanislav Petrov perceived the United States versus or the Soviet authorities, because I'm aware, as I'm aware, he was not a fan of the United States for a while because of what you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, so, he wasn't, because like I said, the United States were viewed as the enemy.
Yeah.
Everyone genuinely believed in the Soviet Union that it would be the United States who would strike first.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was like...
There's that moment in the documentary, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it was a very amazing moment where he went to go look at the warhead sites in the Black Hills or near the Black Hills in South Dakota, which, by the way, people thinking that like when a nuclear war breaks out, we're going to get hit in New York, LA, Chicago. I mean, we probably will, but if it was like global, but really the strategic locations of hit, that enemies would want to hit us in are the Midwest, like Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, where all the silos are. So anyway, he's there and he's talking to the guy who's sort of a tour guide of this museum. And the guy's explaining the power of all this and explaining the context, the historical context, with a very quaint, delightful Southern accent. And Petrov just kind of loses his shit and just starts saying, like, how, why are you saying this as if like we were going to attack first? You were going to attack first.
Yeah.
And then the guy, and they sort of like come to an understanding of like, we both thought we were going to attack first. And I'm pretty sure that whole scene and most of that movie was scripted, but it's still a very brilliant moment that really defines the Cold War.
It's a very real thing because, look, it's not like look, a lot of people, at least people in the West, tend to think that we in the Eastern Europe are some sort of, we have funny accents and we are simple-minded. No, we're not. We have PhD just like you guys do. We have enough of inventive. the
You
things
guys got to space before we did. Let's just make that clear.
look, things like why Soviet Union failed wasn't because of dumb people. It was because of dumb economic systems in the background that destroyed any incentive for people to make smart things. If you've known, if you look at Nobel Prize receivers from the post-Soviet sphere, like from the United States prides itself on Nobel Prizes. If you look at how many of these people actually came from the post-Soviet sphere and emigrated to the United States, you'd be surprised. Right.
Let me guarantee you, it's all just
it's more than one.
It's ex-Nazis and Jews. That's what it is.
not really. There's a lot.
I know.
There's a lot. Like I know. Like the thing. Like it's and I feel like a lot of people consider that we're dumb. Like no, a lot of people genuinely believed the idea, the fact that a lot of people really, especially in Russia, like, and I gave Alex our map of like literacy rates in Russia in 1887. And the thing is, like, a lot of people learned to read and write because of the Soviet Union. A lot of people got their education. A lot of people, because the Tsar, like, Soviet Union was awful, but the Tsar also wasn't a good guy, you know. The Tsar was really, really bad. So for a lot of people, this was a genuine improvement, at least for a while. If they weren't shot and weren't kulaks, that's a whole different story. However,
I mean, well, I was gonna say there's I have some at some point, I don't know when it's coming out, but I have an article about LGBT rights in the Soviet Union and how it wasn't exactly great.
You mean none? You mean literally criminalization?
Except for the very brief period of time where there really were no laws between 1917 and like 1927. It was kind of this like liberal haven, but then it like was taken away because it's against the revolution. That's
counter-revolutionary activity, obviously.
Exactly.
But the thing is, like, what I want to point here is, like, Petrov honestly believed in the ideals of the Soviet Union. He really genuinely believed those things, and, you know, he really believed that this country was the best country. He really believed that it was doing the best, because, of course, he lived in a privileged position there, because he was one of those very few people who got access to all these military secrets, and he was very highly educated. And so he got to shop in all the privileged stores. He got to like experience. He lived in a closed town, one of those secret towns. He lived in a closed city where like everything's, you know, polished up, like, you know, the center of Manhattan, you know, the most posh district you could imagine, old money style, right? That's the analog here. He lived in the fanciest new apartment block with like the store that actually had sausage all the time and everything. And he was believing he was doing a good job. And that position, where he honestly, sincerely believed the communist ideals, for him, I would say, like, for Latvian, not to launch nukes would be an easy decision. But for him, as a Russian coming from this privileged position, for him, that took a lot of intelligence, really, and a lot of afterthought, because he had experienced the best the Soviet life had to do, because people working in these positions with state secrets, yeah, they were well provided for. This is why people joined the army, because, you know, let's just put it this way. Latvia produced, say, I don't know, radios, whatever, cars, doesn't matter. Those things that Latvia produced.
Excuse me, you mean jalopies? I'm sorry. Anyway, continue.
I will choke you slowly while you sleep.
Continue, please.
Okay, so basically, it is like this. In standard modus operandi, you know, there was basically colonization. So you make a factory in some place, force everyone to work there by literally cutting out. Yes, education in university was free. However, the acceptance rate was promptly cut down to bare minimum. So it was really hard to get into college. So you have no choice. You have to work where there's jobs, and you can't get anything that the jobs produce, because it all goes to Moscow, to the nomenclature, the higher ups in the party system, and to the army. So, you know, as a wise Soviet man, Petrov obviously joined the army because he was a computer nerd, literally. And he had his education, and he thought, well, hell, you know, I'm gonna live the good life with his qualifications and everything. So he's not the type of people that is like horribly oppressed. No, he's living the good life. He's in the higher echelons of the most important strategic forces. And these guys live in their super close towns where no one, like, he's not allowed to talk to his wife about what he does to his job when he like leaves home. And by the way, at that day, he left home with about a liter of tea. That's 2 quarts, like half a gallon of tea, and a bunch of sandwiches. Just say it. I know this. and like the fact is that they lived the most luxurious life the Soviets could possibly imagine. Which makes it, for me, it makes it even more important, because he wasn't one of the oppressed people like we were, like normal people were. He was living the Soviet good life, the best life the Soviet Union could provide of, which makes it even more because like he was very patriotic and he really hated the Americans because he really believed in the Soviet ideals that you guys were the evil because of the capitalist system, and at that point, I think that makes his which really like that makes his achievement even more so worthwhile because he was neither oppressed and he viewed you as enemies, rational enemies.
So he was an ideological ally of the state.
Yes. He lost that afterwards because then again he met famous actors and everything because the state really mistreated him after he did this.
Right. And what really impresses me too is that also adds to your argument that I want to get to now, where you talk about the misconception that he did nothing, because it sounds like he did a lot interiorly, like on the inside. He was very much I'm not going to call him an ideologue, but he believed in the cause. He was a patriot, is what he was.
Yes, definitely.
And I was going to say to like I said, to name names, The Atlantic, which is one of the most celebrated publications in the United States, like journalistically. It's been around since the 19th century, and I think it still is a pretty good publication. I'm not going to. When I say name names, I'm not going to say anything bad about the author because I don't know who she is, but she wrote in 2013. And okay, also to be fair, she didn't write the headline. The headline is "The Man Who Saved the World by Doing Absolutely Nothing," which in the most broad sense of the way of in the most broad sense, sure. Like you could say that, but this mythological idea that Petrov did nothing, and that's why he saved the world, is something that I might have repeated, to be honest, because I think I actually have talked about him before, but I can't remember. But you did already in this conversation, but especially in your episode, a great job basically debunking that idea when you discussed how actively observant he was being. I was especially struck by how this wasn't a matter of faith for him, but it was, or I think Kevin Costner even said that in the documentary. He said he had faith in humanity, or just so many words. He took a leap of faith or something like that. But it wasn't that. It was more that he had zero faith that this kind of thing couldn't happen. And that's why he took it so seriously and why he waited for actual data-driven confirmation of evidence. That is like confirmation from not just him or his people. And he knew how serious this was, so he took it as seriously as possible and looked for evidence. And that seems to me to be what makes Stanislav Petrov such a hero. He was calm under pressure while, shitting his pants, of course, which I think you quoted him as saying he was feeling, at least. So I'm wondering, to what extent do you think this was the norm, at least in the Soviet context?
Yeah, that was not the norm. The norm was doing things for the check mark, doing things the superiors would like you to do. And you got to remember, he had to make a call. He had to make a call, either calling for nuclear annihilation or literally stating and taking responsibility for the fact that it's a false call. There was no option where he just ignored it. There was no way he could just, and he got into trouble because he was persecuted and put into court in trial. And in Soviet Union, because he had to fulfill a diary. Everything that happens, you have to write it down. I saw that spot and that spot. And he hadn't written it because he was sitting there stressed out of his life while making the call.
You're making me so angry with this.
He did not write down that he made a call to Andropov to say it was a false call. So they persecuted him for that.
Hi everyone, Annette here. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Eastern Border. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who are supporting us on Patreon or via our website. Your financial support is really what keeps this show going, so thank you from the bottom of our heart. If you're not a Patreon and would like to become one, head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/theeasternborder, or support us via our website, www.theeasternborder.lv. That said, hope you're enjoying this episode, and talk to you later. Bye!
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
I can't even with that,
and
as they say.
The thing's like he could not. He had to make this call. This is his decision. What he's going to report upstairs, and then the party meeting. Basically, Andropov would have dropped nukes without a second thought. Like that's the thing that I think Petrov also knew, because Andropov, he was the leader of the KGB during the previous chairman's.
Right. It's sort of like somebody like saying no to Putin right now in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That guy was like angry, and this guy has to make a phone call, and that probably was one of the heaviest phone calls he's making in his life. We in the Soviet parts had this saying that CIA had the most money, but KGB had the best men.
I'm just instinctively agreeing with that. That just feels right.
Because
I don't know why.
Because they are looking over your shoulder right now and aiming at your head.
Yeah, probably. I can probably see it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a laser dot coming through my window. Yeah.
No, the thing is that this whole argument comes from people who don't understand how it's like to be at the responsible moment in your time. I have sadly been in positions where I've had, like, when I was arrested in Transnistria together with my American friend who lives in Kiev, Anthony from Ukraine Without Hype podcast. Highly recommend that one either. By the way, I'm pretty sure most of your listeners listen to that too. But like, if you don't, Ukraine Without Hype by Anthony Barthaway, he was with me in Ukraine through all the war zones together with my buddy Victor from Germany, and like they don't speak Russian at all. And
I remember this. Yeah.
And we were arrested there, and then I get to translate this stuff. And at one point, you have to click off your emotions. You have to just turn on your training and be like, okay, now this is the time when I do it. But everyone around me is panicking. Everyone around me is going crazy. They're screaming. They're threatened. They're afraid. And you have to stay cool. And I know, because I was dealing with two people who don't speak any Russian whatsoever in Ukraine while being arrested and vetted by the special forces, okay? I think I have the authority to talk about how it's like to be in high-stress situations here. And not talking about, like, other stuff, right? But I'll just use this as an example. The mental stress you go through, they pay big money to CEOs because of the high-risk decisions you make.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, because by saying he's doing nothing is just like, I don't know, it denigrates the whole idea.
Doing nothing is an act of doing something when you're in that context. That's my point.
Because he sat down, looked at the data, decided it was not enough. He wanted to wait for more evidence.
Yes. Because he understood the stakes. That's the big thing. Yeah. Because if you don't understand the stakes, sure, if you're sitting there like not sending out the TPS report or whatever the hell, like, yeah, the stakes are pretty damn low. Maybe your job is on the line, but that's only if you like weren't doing your job for, months on end anyway. I'm just saying that, like, I think that this idea of him not doing anything is silly because he's not doing the thing that is like the bad thing to do. And by not doing the bad thing is not doing nothing. He's doing something by not doing the bad thing.
He's actively making a decision here.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Again, and I think honestly that comes from the idea, like, because people like to think about Soviet Union as if we were all like machines, not people, which my show really honestly tries to debunk, because we're human beings, we're just like y'all. We're just like y'all, just a bit more. I'm using y'all now. I have been.
I was gonna say you're just like us. You say y'all now.
Well, see, that's the thing, and the fact that he used his training to the best of his abilities, and the fact that he wasn't a military guy, that really helped. Because a military person, and a lot of people, by the way, his contemporaries have said that as a military person, they would have launched nukes immediately. He didn't, because he wasn't from the military. He was a civilian that was just in this position. He was a programmer originally, basically, for the
I really hesitate saying this because I don't want to alienate the parts of my audience that understand that I don't feel this way. I don't want them to feel betrayed, but I have expressed skepticism about education, like higher education before, at least in the United States, depending on what you're talking about. But I do think that kind of like removed critical way of looking at it is something you don't, very few people just have it. You have to be trained in it. And I suspect in his case, he was trained in it. Like that's really where it came from.
That's the thing which people don't understand. Like a lot of people also think that, for example, my job is super easy because, if you look at only the bright sides of my job, you would see like wow, dude, he makes a podcast. Celebrity from Latvia going to United States. Wow,
Travels
amazing.
the world. Yeah.
Travels the world, writes for Foreign Policy magazine. Yeah, except you missed the part where, I've been nearly killed twice now.
More, I'm going to say more twice recently. We'll say that. How about that?
That works better. That's a problem. That I do it because I think it's my duty. And if I would live if I could live a more normal life, I probably would. But I'm one of those troublemaker people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help myself. But
you have Hunter S. Thompson as an idol. I mean, it's just gonna be like
I am now showing my Spider Jerusalem to him. Yeah,
I was gonna say I would throw you in the same pot if you don't if you'll allow some more bashfulness live. I will put you in the same pot as Christopher Hitchens, like just the people who put themselves out there. I know. I'm just saying, like these guys are part of the same tradition of just. I mean, I'm working on something. I don't know if it's going to come out, but I am very much of the opinion that a lot of people who take stands that aren't necessarily popular, especially with establishments. I think that they also seem to have kind of an aligned establishment tradition along with them.
That's my problem, by the way. Right now I'm working on. I want to do a radio show in Latvia for youth to explain. Look, get rid of the Soviet mentality, and I think some people might not want to hire me because, again, I'm those people who said openly that, hey, you can't blame all the Russians for all our troubles, since in 1989 when we voted to leave the Soviet Union, Latvia was only 50% Latvian, but 85% voted to leave. So our own state propaganda is not doing that well as well. Then again, I'm a historian, and history, as you well know, sir, gets used for political purposes and mutilated and tortured and spread out all the way just to fit the narrative agenda.
Constantly. That's what it's called. It's called. I mean, you probably came across this term, presentism. That's what it is.
Yes. And the thing is, and that really hurts for. In my case, everyone knows I'm very much pro-Ukrainian all the way because, again, I've lost 20 people in this war. I've almost been killed by this whole thing myself. And I am open about my biases. But then when people tell me, why are you... Then people call me, why are you not unbiased? Well, because I lost people here. All this emotional baggage that is with you there. So this is why I feel so close with Petrov in a way, because, again, he has all this emotional baggage with him. All these things, and if you watch the movie, the how do you call drama documentary? I don't know that term. I'm so my English language skills are not on par with yours, good sir. I hereby apologize.
It's called The Man Who Saved the World. It's a docudrama. It's sort of like it's like I don't know if you ever saw it. I feel kind of gross about even talking about this movie because there's part of me that's uncomfortable about it, even though I'm sure it is a good movie. I haven't seen it since it came out, called United 93, and it's this drama that depicts the fourth flight of 9/11 that crashed into Pennsylvania, and it has a documentary kind of feel to it, and I think it was an aesthetic of the time. I think it really was something we needed at that time. I don't know how it feels now. In retrospect, it feels kind of gross, but that's just me. I'm not sure. I have to go back and watch it. But anyway, look, that's what this new movie is very interesting because it blurs the line between real and fiction because there's flashbacks that are acted out by actors, but the current stuff is by Petrov himself.
I want to explain some things about the making of the movie because the Russian documentary that I watched, and I want to touch this point now. The guys who made the documentary, by the way, that I watched most recently, which got me, I got married, for all of y'all Alex listeners who don't listen to my show, I got married recently, and I'm on my honeymoon trip here in Texas. And just I was getting married, I released an episode because bills don't pay themselves, I have to release episodes. But I watched this documentary, and it was Petrov himself did not want to be a part of it at all. He was very hostile. He was hostile at the beginning, and like the guy really got his trust over time, because Petrov just always said that he was just, he never thought of himself as a hero. He always thought of himself as, well, I was just the right man in the right place at the time. That's it, and because he had been denigrated so much by the Soviet government and then the Russian government that he was like stunned. And literally, Kevin Costner, his personal hero, coming over to Russia and greeting him was the fact that it actually pushed him forwards to all this stuff. And of course, well, money did help, because again, he was making 200. He was like living off $200 a month from his pension, because he didn't receive a huge pension, because he wasn't a hero at all. And like, what I find interesting is that in this movie, what really struck him in the Western world in general was like one guy from Germany who basically operates a funeral service. And this guy watched this guy was living in East Germany, this funeral service guy, and he saw some sort of random thing about Petrov on TV or something, like a short thing on his birthday. And then he decided to go and find out where Petrov lives, because, well, he's a business owner. He's, quite substantial means, and he decided, help out this guy who lives off $200 a month. And then he basically funded the whole thing. He helped out get the movie. He helped out the movie. He started the movie, the progress of the movie and everything. And he like reached out to Hollywood stars, and then people went there and people reached out to him, because honestly speaking, I'm born in 1989, and holy hell, if Petrov had made the decision to nuke everything, I would be dead. I wouldn't have been born.
I'm willing to bet I wouldn't be here either. I mean, I think a lot of us wouldn't be. I mean, it's hard to say. We can never say.
And the thing is, he's so unknown in Russia that the documentary made, like, the company that made the documentary about Petrov, they visited his hometown, the right now open town where he worked, like, and they interviewed his parents and everything, because he's passed away now.
Mm-hmm. He died in 2017. Yeah, so people are not aware. He died at the age of 77 of pneumonia, apparently.
Yeah, and but he was but honestly, as far as I've seen from the movie, his final years were truly happy. He for once achieved happiness in his life, which he truly deserved. So
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, not he was in Hollywood and met actors.
There's part of me that, again, like I was saying earlier, there's part of me that thinks I would not want to have that knowledge in my head of being the person that saved the world. I don't like the idea of that in general. I also find myself being sort of weirded out by that. Like I mean, it's one of those things. It's not even just that. It disturbs me, because it's like, no, it should not be one person that does this, but it gets into something that I want to, like, sort of close us out with as a discussion, but I'll let you respond to that.
My main thought here was that the fact that he really honestly hated the United States when he was making this decision. And then he learned, like, after, and this is why he was really refusing to make the documentary, because he really viewed the United States as the enemy even after the collapse. And, like, only when, like, and the big tragedy happened when, like, the Russian documentary also shows him, like, warming up to the West and understanding the whole idea, the fact that, really justifying his decision at the time and his persecution afterwards. Because he felt really bad, because he thought he had done something good for the Soviet Union, not destroying the Soviet Union. He didn't care about the world. He cared about the Soviet Union at the time. And at that point, when the West shows him more attention than the Soviet Union does, yeah, at that point, at least the documentary that I saw showed that at the end, he started to care more about the fact that, and he apparently was very happy about the whole thing. The big idea is the very fact that he learned to understand how the West works and learned to appreciate the fact that the Western world is not an actual enemy of the Russian people. I think that's the thing that pushed the company that made the documentary about him, the very in-depth one, like a year ago. Yeah, those guys are now foreign agents, an undesirable organization in Russia. Basically, they're on the same level as ISIS in Russia under Russian law. But
the people who literally just killed a bunch of people in Russia. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Look, about that thing. By the way, I'm mentioning this first on the show. To be honest, and I'll make an episode on this. I honestly don't believe that the guys they caught for the act of terrorism in that white car had anything to do with the act of terrorism itself. There has been no proof whatsoever shown anywhere besides their brutal torture before every court case that links them to the whole event. And the idea that this well-planned act of terrorism would have been perpetrated by men who then would just use main roads to drive out of the country, and they were caught in the region, supposedly caught in the region where it borders both Ukraine and Belarus, right, in Bryansk. We have seen zero evidence whatsoever of them being tied to the act of terrorism in any way humanly possible. I firmly believe that this is just FSB checking their marks, picking up random strangers, and just putting them into jail. And just torturing them. Because honestly speaking, zero, I thought they got the real guys at the day when I was covering this in the first time. However, right now, I mean, it would be a big win for Putin if you could show that you actually caught the terrorists.
Of course it would.
Right now, only thing we've seen is the alleged car being a picture of it being shot through by bullets, and 4 dudes who are literally tortured daily that'll say anything you want them to say. That's it. That's the evidence. That's the evidence of these 4 guys. I'm sorry, but I'm deeply skeptical of the Russian authorities here. Because I am also on the terrorist list, just so you know.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, let's tie this into Petrov in a way, too, in a really fun way.
And he also got on the bad list, because sometimes saving the world is not enough for you to be, loyal citizens of your country.
And that in and of itself is going to help make you more reticent to talk to documentarians about such things. Mm-hmm. And that is going to be a big issue with him. Now, I think the elephant in the room that we should sort of close out with as a discussion with this story is what exactly and broadly he helped us avoid.
You know this one better than I do, because I don't. Because, to be honest, I am not informed about the nuclear arsenals of the both countries at the time, but I have been constantly told that it's total nuclear annihilation, mutually assured destruction and things.
That's what he said in that documentary too, is that he predicted that if the Soviets launched an attack on the United States, you have 200 million people dead within a day. And then about half, give or take, of the United States population. And then the United States retaliates at the same time because of our alert system. And you have half of Russia's population dead. And that right there is already half a billion people.
Not Russia's, Soviet Union's, including Latvians and Estonians.
Right. Well, yeah, at that point back then. But I'm saying now, what would it look like? But anyway, the point being is it just reminded me of a sort of near miss scenario that we know plenty about. And it's funny that Petrov actually mentioned this in his interviews where he said we've never been closer. And I'm thinking, 1962 called. And by that I mean the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I don't say him, for him.
Yeah,
for him, that
sure,
was
for him. Yeah, he was probably in his teens when that happened, something like that. But my point just is that I call him our grand poobah of history podcasting, Dan Carlin. He's spoken about this at length.
Praise be.
And his amazing Destroyer of Worlds episode, which I think is honestly one of his masterpieces.
Let me tell you a secret. Evie defines Dan Carlin boring.
How dare I hope he never hears this, because I honestly well, maybe I do hope he hears this, because then he'll think we're cool because of how outraged we are.
I don't know. She likes biology podcasts for some reason. She's
okay. Well, that's very different, and also
weirdly enough, Evie genuinely liked the Anabaptist episode, but she couldn't stand she could not stand Wrath of the Khans. She found Wrath of the Khans boring.
Huh?
How Look, I'm at a loss here. She's my wife now, and I love her with all my heart. But truth to be told, I was offended and shocked.
Well, I sincerely hope she doesn't hear my podcast, because I'm sure it's even more boring.
I mean, she's listened to your podcast and she likes it. So
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
She listens to my show and she likes it. I'm like,
you better take that.
I'm like, look, dear listeners, sometimes we podcasters have no idea what you listeners actually like.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I see the bad reviews and I'm just kind of like, yeah, you're probably right. I'm long-winded. I'm biased and so on and so forth, but whatever. Anyway,
I am funded both by the KGB and CIA in my reviews.
There you go. Yeah, the FSB especially. Yeah. So I'm bringing up Carlin because he did that episode about the Cuban Missile Crisis that actually really was just a sort of history. It was basically the movie Oppenheimer plus a bunch of other stuff. Like that's how big that episode was. And it was an amazing episode. But he seemed to chalk up the real reason that we all escaped nuclear holocaust in 1962 was thanks to the personalities in charge at the time.
That basically you mean amphetamines. Which JFK injected daily.
In Kennedy's case, probably, yeah. But I don't know about Khrushchev. But my point is, you have these two guys, Kennedy and Khrushchev. And I have kind of come around to the idea, even though I used to be like this big contrarian, anti-Kennedy kind of person. And to a certain degree, I kind of am still, obviously, because I can't help myself.
Let me sidetrack this for a second. This is going to fit in, by the way, right? Because I went to Dooley Plaza.
Oh, yeah.
And it was great because, I saw Kennedy's assassination place. And the thing is, I was sold a brochure by a conspiracy theory guy for $5. Because there are people who are still there and who've spent 30 years of their lives sitting there studying the evidence. It's insane. But I like the fact how life moves on. People stopping their cars. It's there. You have X's on the asphalt, by the way, people who haven't seen this. And it's there and people take photos of that stuff. And the thing is the same with Petrov too. You live through the monumental event and then life moves on. You have to live through that stuff.
Well, that was his that's what he wanted. He wanted that he kept saying, I want to leave the past behind. Now, anyway, the point I make of bringing up Kennedy and Khrushchev is that they were singular personalities at the time. That was Carlin's point. And, I just basically have come around to thinking that, basically I'm a psychological essentialist, so I think that that's really important. But I also think that trends and forces and great men of history interact to create the events.
That's the thing. I also believe the fact that you cannot go into the camp of great men or trends and forces. It's somewhere in between because those great men embody the trends and forces.
Yeah, but here's the really hard thing when we're talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, because then you're talking about two men that I think might have been vital, or 1983 when Stanislav Petrov, he was the vital man. The idea of a vital man, let alone two, or I'm saying that in reverse there, but the idea of a vital individual or a couple individuals is terrifying.
Yeah,
you actually think about it as a historian.
That is so scary. That is the scariest. This is why I like horror movies.
Yeah,
because I'm a historian and ghosts, vampires, serial killers. Yeah, cool. Do you know? I'm always judging this at okay, cool. That's a ghost. Stalin versus ghosts. How many people ghosts have killed? Right?
I'm sure plenty of people would say millions, but no, it's zero. It's zero. You're talking about Stalin versus what? I don't get it.
Stalin beats ghosts, aliens, werewolves, and vampires put together. Bigfoot included. Mothman included. Stalin, in the case of horrific human beings, you take Stalin, you take Hitler, right? You take Pol Pot, right? In Cambodia, you put these people.
Idi Amin, yeah, fill in the blank.
You put those people in there, and then you look at ghosts. How can you be afraid of ghosts? You should be afraid. You should be afraid of humans. Ghosts are just scaring some people out of their pants. They don't put people in concentration camps or gulags. They don't have the potential to start nuclear war. And Petrov here, like I said, My main point here is like to debunk the idea that he did nothing. I hate the whole idea.
Yeah.
He did like what any United States military official would do. Rely on your training, make conscious decisions, and stay calm at like staying calm at a risky situation is very hard to do. If people haven't been there, I have been there. It is difficult. I'm really bad at everyday stuff. This is why I have my wife have it. Like I don't know where anything is placed at our house. Everything knows everything. I know where to find everything. But but I'm really, really good at one thing. When shit hits the fan, I'm the guy that stays calm in those situations. And that is the thing that I've learned, because that has saved my life. Literally, multiple times. I know how to not panic. And
that's what I mean. That's what experience does. I mean, that's a psychological thing. It really is all about experience. Yeah,
and that has been only in relation to my life.
Sure,
to my own life. But Stanislav Petrov, why? Like, I want to tie this together. Why Westerners should know about him? Because for one, when you speak about agency and people of the Eastern Bloc, we're just as smart as you are. We're just as good as you are. We're not dumber than you. We're not like brainwashed like you.
I don't know about that. Come on. I'm just kidding. No, for sure.
I will find you and kill you while you sleep.
Fuck, I forgot you're in the same country as me right now. No. I want to like pin on this before we wrap up, because it really does lean into something we've talked about on both of our shows, like when we've talked about Ukraine and what's going on there, but also your lovely episode with Andrew Heaton that you did. And I love that episode. It's to me, I saw that episode as like this amazing way to do debate. And I think it's also because you guys are in the same room. I think that's part of it. But
the main purpose of the thing was, like, as we talked before, like, even if we disagree, we really tried to show people that you can disagree with someone and have a civilized discussion, which y'all should fucking learn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, like, one, Heaton does know that. He's
I know, but like, it's about other
crazy.
people. Like, it's about mostly like the fact that please don't hate your neighbor. Love your neighbor instead.
Carlin has been banging that drum for years at this point. I mean, but my point of bringing that up is that he talked about in your conversation about NATO expansion. That's the big bugaboo on the American anti-interventionist side of the debate. I'm just saying that I understand the position that comes from, and I even understand theoretically why it has value and wisdom, in the sense that I guess what I'm saying is I'm sympathetic to it as a viewpoint, and I'm more sympathetic to it from when I hear it from Andrew, because I mean, he's obviously like unbelievably smart. He's one of the smartest people both you and I have ever talked to, I think. But I'm sympathetic to it because
I've seen him in person, man.
Oh, and now he's not smart anymore. Is that what you're saying?
I never said that. You said that.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
He's a cool dude. I love him.
Yeah.
Like,
no, but
he's very smart, by the way.
No. But what I'm saying is that I think that my issue with the realist argument, the geopolitical realist argument, is that it doesn't take sufficient account into individual human psychology of leaders.
I wanted to mention this.
And the production of narratives and identities is what I'm saying.
My realist argument is very simple, and this is going to drive to my podcast more closely. Realist argument is like this. Either Poland is going to get nukes via South Korea, because South Korea can produce nukes in 6 months.
Sure.
Or you give us money.
Sure.
Your choice. Nuclear proliferation or American money.
Well, I was going to say, because like people don't understand this also when they're talking about Israel, for example, which is Israel has made it very clear they don't want us on the ground. They don't want American boots on the ground. They're like, we're good. We're cool, guys.
Yeah, and Eastern Europe is like this. Look, Ukraine gave up its nukes, and then they got invaded with guarantees from UK, US, and Russia. Russia invaded them. You can talk crap about Budapest memorandums, but they mean a lot in diplomatic circles. So right now, Poland is buying the most of its military equipment from South Korea. They have a working relationship. They're going to continue this relationship. North Korea is building up its military potential. We in the Baltics are working with Poland very, very, very closely. South Korea can build a nuke in 6 months. They have all the technology required. So South Korea is about to go nuclear very soon with their own threats. I know this because sources and people living there, and like I have my ways, okay? South Korean people are right now very much pro-nuclear. They want to have nukes. North Korea has them. Why not we? If South Korea gets nukes, Poland also gets nukes. And for one, I am very much in favor of the American taxpayer. We will totally be okay with you paying less money. Just let us have nukes. Thank you.
Well, and see, that's the thing, is that somehow, typically, when we arm other countries, even if we love them, as we do, I think, in the Baltics case, it does seem to cost us a lot more. And that's the issue that a lot of Americans have. Now, with but that's not why people don't like it. I think that's not what is the issue.
I'm openly biased in the situation, but like,
sure,
if we stepped into the NATO alliance and we are paying our 2%, way more than that. We're committed to reaching 3% even. Honestly, and like either we are under a nuclear umbrella, which is important these days, or we actually work with Poland and South Korea and get our own shit together, because there is no, for us it's an existential threat.
Well, no, of course it is. That's the thing, and I think that's why I really appreciated Heaton's perspective, is that he is fully on board with that as a premise, because it is a good premise. It's like that's what really bothers me, I gotta say, about when I say realists, I mean capital R realists, the John Mearsheimer or Henry Kissinger way of looking at things. My big issue with that is that it doesn't take into account how other, especially quote unquote, satellite powers feel. It doesn't take into account agency of individual leaders on top of that too. And
talking about this, Poland has decided to take this matter take this matter into their own hands. Their president has stated that Poland shall have the largest land army in the whole of EU.
That's a bit. That's okay. Okay.
They have by the way, you might not know this, but Poland has 40 million people. They're the fourth largest economy.
No, I don't. Yeah. No. I'm laughing because I'm just kind of like, it's revealing my own lack of knowledge on my own part.
Poland has larger population than Italy.
Yeah.
Poland is economically strong, and they are our historical allies. So you know what? Poland, out of all people, like they take their history seriously. They remember the siege of Vienna, as wicked as it was, because like Jan Sobieski took all the time traveling through, gathering his forces before coming to aid, because like he was dealing with Pope, not giving him money and shit. But Polish people, they remember.
Yeah. And like, no. Yeah. Well, and the reason I bring up like the whole great man versus transit forces thing is just because I think that like when people discount the importance of what individual leaders want to do, like Putin in this particular case, I think what we're doing is a disservice to how things unfold. Like, yes, for example, let's just pretend, for example, that 110% is true that NATO expansion makes Russia, or we'll say more specifically, Putin and his cronies feel threatened. Putin and his cronies still made a choice. Like, that's what I find so disturbing about the realist perspective, if taken to its logical conclusion. And I'm not saying Heaton did this. He did not. He was very clear about that. That's what I really appreciate about that.
Let me be clear. Also, I highly respect Heaton. He's my friend. He hosted me for a few days, and he's an amazing human being. I just happen to disagree with him on some things. That's it. Doesn't ruin our friendship, by the way.
Of course not. Yeah.
And this is what I want everyone to take away from this. Just because I disagree with Heaton doesn't mean we're not friends. No, we really are friends.
Of course. Well, and the thing is, I tend to be more sympathetic to the idea that the United States should take a step back from the world stage until it figures out what it wants to support, which is kind of silly and naive. I recognize that, especially listening to you and Heaton talking about that. I was really recognizing that because I was like, you know what? Heaton's right. The United States has never had a consensus about foreign involvement because it hasn't. It never, absolutely never has, as far as I know, except maybe in that weird period following 1945, which is an abnormality. And I think that we're kind of adjusting politically into something new. I don't think that any presidential candidate represents that. That's why I'm kind of irritatingly a fence sitter in that respect. But
I will just cover this conversation with a simple thing. In Dallas, I went to the thrift shop because, you know, we like to explore those things because they're fun. Yeah. And I bought myself a Ross Perot pin.
Yes, I heard you talking about that on the podcast. I think it's like
3 people in Latvia have Ross Perot pens, and I am one of those people. And if Ross Perot would have run today at his age, I think he'd win 100%.
I mean, we have a Ross Perot. It's a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, as far as like spoilers go, I don't know. I'm not saying they're politically they're nothing alike.
I mean, Ross Perot, I believe, no idea who this person is.
Well, I mean, you know who Kennedy is, right? You know who John F. Kennedy was. You know who Robert F. Kennedy was, right? The family, the big.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so this is Robert.
See, sir, I'm currently in the United States of America. I spent my honeymoon in Texas.
You're gonna know who JFK is.
This is not my first rodeo, you Californian.
As they say, yeah. No, but RFK Jr. is Robert F. Kennedy's son, and he is. Last I heard, I haven't checked. He was running 11% popularity in polls, so he could be a bit of a, again, to use the word, a spoiler. And I think that, like, that's fine. I actually like that. I like the idea of there being multiple parties. Last time we had that in any meaningful way was 1912. And that was when you had Woodrow Wilson, Taft, Teddy Roosevelt, and the socialist Eugene Debs. And we ended up with
Bull Moose. Bull Moose for life.
I was going to say, out of all those guys, I don't know. I mean, I like our friend CJ from Dangerous History. I like how he, as an anarcho-capitalist, said he endorsed Eugene Debs, the socialist. I love that. That was so good.
I met CJ in 2018, by the way, in live.
Oh, yeah. Over in Harvard. Yeah.
I think it's like, for me, I had a lot of enjoyment today because I'm gonna show it to you.
Sure.
You guys don't see it on it. Please cut this one out. Maybe, I don't know. I have a Teddy Roosevelt bandana.
Oh no!
from his Memorial Library and Museum.
I love.
Look at this. Look at this.
It's impossible not to love Teddy Roosevelt, even if you hate his policies, because he was like I've always said that.
I just dropped it behind the table. I will need to.
No worries. No. I mean, I've always said that Teddy Roosevelt was the model that, like, you have someone like Donald Trump. Donald Trump should be the next Teddy Roosevelt, like, on paper, but he's not, and that's going to make. That's going to be the other next flood of hate mail you get.
Let's get Donald Trump shot and make a 2-hour speech after being shot.
Oh my God,
think like I watch a lot of weird videos on YouTube when I fall asleep because I can't follow the war all the time, right?
Yeah.
But in one of those videos, someone just they do like weird stuff there in the conspiracy area, and I saw a video recently where someone explained that Teddy Roosevelt made national parks to preserve Bigfoot because he's really just caged up Bigfoot sightings.
No, that's 100% true though. That's 100% fact. Like, come on, like that's just a fact. I obviously Bigfoot is the weirdest conspiracy theory that I've never latched onto. If you want to talk to me about UFOs, I'm going to hear you out because it's going to be
look.
If you want to talk about JFK, I'm going to hear you out. It's going to be fun.
Look, I present to you this because I need to go. Otherwise, my wife will literally kill me. We're still in our honeymoon, and I'm technically working right now.
Yes.
But dear listeners, to both of our shows, I will have Alex over, and we're going to do a combined episode again when we're going to talk about JFK assassination, Bigfoot, UFOs, and I'm going to get my friend John Michael Gauthier, who does like science reporting. He's friends with Avi Loeb from Harvard University, who's the head of the UFO research thing right now. Seriously, let's do it. I promise you, dear listeners, that we'll make an episode with my friend John Michael Gauthier, Alex here, and myself, and we're going to talk a whole episode about conspiracy theories, Bigfoot, Kennedy assassination, UFOs, all that stuff.
Yes.
Full on for like 3 hours, man. 3 hours.
Before we do that, I actually have one more thing.
Sure.
I'm gonna restructure this before we close out because it's kind of a big question, but a simple question. Okay, so we know Stanislav Petrov's position. We've been talking about that. I'm just gonna ask you, what would you have done?
I would have pushed the button, definitely.
Okay, so here's the thing.
I'm sorry, but like if you're
in his position in that context, yeah.
I'm an evil, horrible man.
No. That's an honorable thing to say because you're recognizing the reality of human nature, I think. I have my own like idea of what I would do.
I'm not an idealist here. The stress is there. I don't know. Like I know my breaking points. I very well know my own breaking points.
No, and I thought about that. I thought about it in the exact same way, and I was thinking I'd like to think that I would do something, but I think I might have hid under a desk. Honestly,
that's the things like
I just keep me out of this.
The most important.
I'm not going to do anything.
The most important thing is that when you read in documentaries or watching documentaries about this stuff, when someone tells you that the man who saved the world did nothing, that's a blatant lie. He did a lot of things.
He did a lot. And what he did. Let's be as clear as possible before we end this. What he did was observe and think.
Yes.
He was observing and thinking. He was never flippant about what he was doing. He never hid under a desk like I said I would do.
Yeah.
And he never pushed the button like Chris Up said he would do. This man,
everyone around him,
they wanted him to be one of those things, and he did not.
Everyone around him was panicking, screaming, yelling at him, and he kept his cool. And if you all been in a stressful situation in general in your lives, think about that times 200 million.
It's incomparable because you are talking about up to billions of dead people, which is a number that we can't even wrap our heads around.
And the whole part of the fact that if you think about this, that our lives at some point in history have just been there on the balance of the decision of a single human being, flawed as we are, because we are not perfect. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. Latvia is fucked. America is fucked. We're all basically, we all see, every intelligent person sees the flaws in their own government. Every intelligent person sees how, the world is not the way it should be. We all see the flaws in everything. And then you still choose to save this flawed existence instead of letting it all burn down. Yeah, this is why I respect Stanislav Petrov.
That's a great way of closing it. I will let you do your normal closeout for both our shows here.
Look, it's hard for me to do that as well, but hey guys, please support me and Alex on Patreon. You know the links at this point. And to be honest, I'm just happy for y'all Americans because you impressed me. You've taught me a lot, and I like it here. There's a reason why you won the Cold War, and I, as a Soviet-born man, can say with honesty. It's just a thing that you don't appreciate what you have. Please do. Understand that the liberties that you have and the freedoms that you have and the fact that you can drive everywhere and the whole experience you have. You know what? You've earned this, and this was not free. And please appreciate it more because I do, because I'm just a guest here and I love this whole thing. Thank you. До свидания, товарищи. And remember, happiness is mandatory.
Thank you for listening to the Eastern Border Show. If you have any questions or comments, go to our website, theeasternborder.lv, and leave a comment there. Or email us at theeasternborder@gmail.com. We'll be sure to answer. You can also follow us on social media and contact us there. If you enjoyed this episode, then leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends about us. It really helps us grow the show. And remember, happiness is mandatory.